everybody. Welcome back to Hot Girl Math. I'm your host, Mystic Brew, founder of Return to Self, where I help you remember who you were before the world taught you who to be. Today, we are continuing our time travel expedition with 2019. So if you've been following along with the series, we've been time traveling from 2016 up until the present day. And this video is going to go back to 2019, where things really started to get heated, as if they weren't already, but you'll see. So let's get started. As you guys know, we start with numerology, and for 2019, it was a 3-year. Now, for a 3, it's a very different frequency than what we saw for 2018, which was a master number 11, or a 2 if you reduce it down to a single digit. 3 is a number of creativity, self-expression, communication, the voice, and visibility. 3 is also the artist. It's the storyteller. It's the one who takes what they've learned and turns it into something that the world can hear. And you'll see shortly that 2019 was definitely a year where a lot of people wanted to be heard. It is expansive, it's optimistic, and sometimes it can be a little scattered. The energy of 3 in numerology, especially when it comes to what we are dissecting here, is asking, what do you have to say, and do you have the courage to actually say it? Now, as you know, with the work that I do in the shadows, everything has a shadow side. You have a shadow side, everything that exists has a shadow side, and the numerology of 3 also has a shadow side. And that looks like superficiality, it looks like being performative, and it looks like being avoidant, especially through humor, distraction, or overstimulation. Now, when it comes to the Chinese zodiac, 2019 was especially poignant. I gotta look that up. I don't even know if that's the right word, but it's what came to mind, because it was the year of the Earth Pig. Now, what's important about that is in the Chinese zodiac, the pig is the last of the whole zodiac. So this is the end of one entire 12-year cycle. And then it would begin again with the rat in 2020, which I can't wait to do the 2020 video. I'm sure you're excited as well. This obviously carries a lot of symbolic weight because 2019 was cosmically closing out a chapter. It was the last breath before a profound new foundation, which again, if you think back, I'm sure we can all remember, 2019 kind of felt like the last year things were normal, whatever that means anymore. I don't even know if normalcy is, I don't even know. But 2019 was that year. Looking back now where it's like, dang, that was the last time before everything just whew. I'll save it for the 2020 video, but you know what I'm talking about. Now, when it comes to the pig in the Chinese zodiac, this is a cool-headed and capable energy in any situation. It's very detail-oriented, it's very intelligent, and it's free-spirited. It's passionate, it's enthusiastic, and the pig's always there for others unconditionally. In traditional Chinese culture, the pig symbolizes wealth, honesty, and practicality. So there's a lot of money influence with the pig as well. And it can also be seen to be a symbol of good luck when it comes to money. So this earth element with the pig is grounding this generous nature into patience and practicality. But the shadow of the earth pig is indulgence, again, avoidance, and a reluctance to look up from what's comfortable to see what's coming. When we look at the astrology of 2019, it was another year that was very cosmically charged, but not because there was some profound cosmic transit. It was a lot of, again, that bubbling up. And I think, again, that's why I've been called to go back and then move forward, because we are right now, current day, experiencing the effects of what has been simmering and moving for the last 10 years. So in 2019, one of the biggest transits of the year was the buildup of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. This was going on throughout the entire year, where Saturn, again, we've talked a lot about Saturn and we've talked about Pluto. Both of these planets were slowly unfolding throughout all of 2019 until they reached their culmination point at the top of January 2020 when they came together in this conjunction. Now, again, we'll save it for the 2020 video, but I want to tell you now that make note of January 12th, 2020. That date is important now because if I'm not mistaken, there is a Saturn-Pluto transit that's coming up fairly soon. I want to say in April, that is tied back to this transit in 2019 into 2020, specifically January 12th, 2020. So it's like this story is still unfolding. So if there was a significant thing in your life at the top of 2020, then there may be something else that's sort of unfolding that's related to that now. This Saturn-Pluto conjunction was also seen as sort of like a global Saturn return. If you are over the age of 30, then you know the Saturn return. If you are in your late 20s, you're probably in your Saturn return right now, your first one, because you have multiple Saturn returns. Sorry if you didn't know that, surprise. And it can be very tricky. I mean, it's different for everybody, but as you know, because we've talked about Saturn so much, Saturn returns, or any return in astrology, is when a planet returns back to where it was when you were born. Now, in this case, this was sort of seen as a global Saturn return because of the karmic nature that applied to the whole world. Saturn and Pluto were winding down a 30+ year cycle in 2019 as they prepared to come together. So life situations arose throughout the year to show what needed to be cleared out of the way so that we could pursue our goals from a place of strength. We weren't able to avoid anymore the fact that some things that were coming up in our lives were no longer working. It was either worn out, it was ready to pass, or fears came up so that we could face them rather than continuing to shove them down. So again, as I'm talking to you about this, I want you to reflect 2019. I have a feeling you probably remember 2019, even though it was crazy enough 7 years ago. Isn't that crazy? What do you mean 7 years ago? It was what is time? But it was 7 years ago in this construct of time. And you may recall perhaps that there were things in your life that were coming up at that time for you to either release, to let go, to face, and to really notice what is no longer working. And again, I cannot wait to talk about 2020 because it all flows into really getting into our own foundation. Another astrological transit that was important to note for 2019 was Jupiter in Sagittarius. It did move into Capricorn at the end of the year, but Jupiter spent most of 2019 in Sagittarius, which is its home sign. So this amplifies Jupiter's energy. So this is the energy of truth-seeking, philosophy, international affairs, belief systems, and expansion. This was also translated into the global discussion, the global dialogue, when it talked about hunger for meaning and voices and perspective. But again, everything has its shadow. So for Sagittarius, this can look like dogma, excess, and overconfidence. Jupiter is a planet that expands, but it expands whatever it's given, whether it's good or bad. So whatever Jupiter touches, it's gonna blow up. Jupiter entered Capricorn in December of 2019, which was a very important transit of the year because Jupiter only changes signs once a year. And again, in 2016, time traveling, get a little loopy, 2026, we'll be experiencing that, I believe, over the summer when Jupiter moves from Cancer, where it is now, into Leo. What was important about this is Jupiter was now joining Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn as the year closed. So there was already all this energy in Capricorn, and I'm a Capricorn stellium. If you're a Capricorn, Capricorn rising, Capricorn sun, moon, if you have prominent Capricorn in your chart, you already know. How are we even here right now? Saturn and Pluto, and then now Jupiter. A lot of sort of magical cosmic brewing happening around old institutional order that was about to face its most severe reckoning, thanks to Pluto and Saturn getting all up in there. Something else to know about astrology in 2019 was that the North Node was in Cancer and the South Node was in Capricorn. So we already have all this energy happening in Capricorn. We just talked about it. Saturn's in there, Pluto's in there, Jupiter just went up in there, and the South Node is in Capricorn. Now, the North Node and the South Node are like two ends of a spectrum. It is the part of the destiny that you're being called to with the North Node, and then your comfort zone with the South Node. This is energy you've already mastered. Now, for some of you, you may have been having your nodal return during 2019 if your South Node is in Capricorn and your North Node is in Cancer in your chart. Either way, this collective energy, which was happening throughout the year, called toward emotional intelligence, home, family, and care with Cancer, this North Node energy in Cancer. Meanwhile, the South Node in Capricorn, again, having that house party with Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter all up in there too, was dragging up unfinished business around power, authority, control, and the abuse of institutional structures. So again, we have that North Node in Cancer, giving us focus on feelings, family, roots, and nurturing, bringing up any imbalances around family and career, home and work, feelings and duty. And then we had the South Node in Capricorn, bringing up issues around authority, control, responsibility, and the structures in our lives. So again, astrologically alone, you can see there is a lot going on here, especially with the added influence of Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter with this South Node transit, all this stuff that needs to come up, which relates back to the numerology of having to face what's not working, having to sit with, where am I performing okayness? Where am I performing that things are fine? What is actually not working? Now, when we look at some of the national news during 2019, this was when Robert Mueller submitted his report about the potential alleged Russia interference with the Trump presidency, and found that Trump's campaign did not collude or conspire with Russia during the 2016 election. The 448-page Mueller report, which was released and in redacted form in April, laid out 10 episodes of potential obstruction of justice on the president's part. There's going to be a lot of talk about Trump in this. I'm just going to let you know now, because in addition to that, an anonymous whistleblower in 2019 within the Trump administration revealed that there was a July phone conversation in which Trump urged Ukrainian President Zelensky to investigate alleged corruption by former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter. Now, the Democrats really felt a way about this because they claim that Trump broke the law by soliciting help from a foreign government in digging up dirt on his political rival. On December 18th of 2019, the House voted along party lines to approve 2 articles of impeachment, making Trump only the 3rd president in U.S. history to be impeached. I just want to be clear here. In 2019, Trump was impeached. And here we are. Anyway, something else that happened in 2019 was that there was a scandal that emerged when it came to some celebrities who were exposed in part of a bribery scheme with college admissions. So basically, Felicity Huffman is one of the celebrities. I believe Lori Loughlin was another one. There were some celebrities that were ousted for bribing colleges to admit their children into these elite universities. And so again, this kind of erupted an ongoing dialogue that was simmering at that point until this came up about systemic inequality, especially in education and the price of privilege. Now, internationally, The umbrella of 2019 was the year of protests, and you may remember that. There was the Hong Kong protest, which gained massive international attention. There were months of huge and sometimes violent protests, which began in June when more than 1 million people marched to protest a bill that would allow extradition to mainland China. During months of clashes, riot police fired 26,000 tear gas and rubber baton rounds and arrested more than 6,100 people. There were also protests in Bolivia, India, Nicaragua, and Russia. In November, the end of fuel subsidies sent Iranians into the street. And there was also a huge protest in Lebanon, which is where I'm from, my lovely country. I love it so much and I wish peace upon them. Protests erupted in Lebanon when plans for a messaging app tax came up and turned into a broader movement and conversation around the corrupt government and political elite. And then in Chile, a metro ticket hike triggered protests claiming more than 20 lives. So again, in all these different parts of the world, and remember numerology, we said 3, the voice, visibility, communication, being seen, being heard. We were seeing little pieces of that all over the globe. You may also remember that in 2019, there was a massive fire that ravaged Notre Dame. Is it Notre Dame or Notre Dame? Notre Dame. You know what I'm talking about. The very old cathedral, in fact, 850-year-old cathedral that caused its spire and roof to collapse. Thousands gathered in the streets while others sang hymns and prayers, and nearly 1 billion euros were pledged for its reconstruction. But many seem to feel like that collapse was a symbol for something else much bigger that was also crumbling. In further devastating news, in 2019, on March 10th specifically, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed 6 minutes after takeoff, killing everyone on board. The crash led to the worldwide grounding of the 737 MAX fleet and revelations that Boeing had concealed safety concerns from regulators was yet another exposure of corporate power prioritizing profit over human life. When it came to pop culture, we are still all up in this superhero world, okay? Because this was when Avengers Endgame came out. So this was also the end of an era. In April of 2019, 10 years of Marvel Cinematic Universe building came to an epic conclusion with the release of Avengers Endgame. This was a hit in the box office, as you can assume, and rounded off a decade-long phase of the MCU. It became the highest-grossing film of all time, dethroning Avatar. The film's emotional center was all about loss and sacrifice and the question of whether the future is worth fighting for, which hit a little too on the nose, right? It was a cultural text and it felt very inseparable from the mood of the moment. And again, this is the beauty of hindsight. You can't always appreciate things when they're happening or grasp the messaging that it is giving you. But if you are capable of reflecting, of sitting down and seeing how everything was aligning with a message that was telling you something, then you can grasp the language of the universe and you are in conversation, which is what we're doing here. After 8 seasons and 73 episodes, we saw the finale of Game of Thrones in 2019. And if you are into Game of Thrones the way I was into Game of Thrones, still am, honestly, I rewatch it all the time, you may have felt a way about how it ended. The season finale received a lot of mixed reactions and was widely criticized by fans, but it still earned a record-breaking 32 Emmy nominations. The show's ending, although largely debated and a bit unsatisfying for fans, became itself a kind of metaphor for the cultural appetite of resolution that kept the world refusing to provide. But as some things end, other things begin, and 2019 was the year that saw a lot of new music from celebrities who shot to stardom, including Billie Eilish. She had a phenomenal year in 2019 when she debuted her album When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? And the success of her song Bad Guy. She also made history by becoming the youngest artist to be nominated in the Grammys' 4 main categories in the same year. She was 17 at the time. Her aesthetic was also alluring and a little different. It was kind of dark. It was whispery. It was not adhering to the traditional pop culture idea of a feminine pop artist. And this brought up a lot of themes around body and image, and also a little bit of this anxiety and dread of what's to come, which kind of represented the exact emotional register of the generation that she represents at the time. Lil Nas X also hit the scene with Old Town Road, and that became the longest running #1 Billboard Hot 100 with 19 consecutive weeks at the top of the chart. And again, here we are with something that is asking us to look at things differently. The song itself was very genre defying. You couldn't really place it in a box. You couldn't place Lil Nas X in a box. And it was an internet-born, openly queer energy that made it to one of the most culturally significant singles of the decade. And last but certainly not least, when it came to music, 2019 was Lizzo's year. She was dominating the pop charts as well. The award shows, red carpets, the commercials. Her songs were everywhere. You know it, you sang it, you were there. And this also brought up another conversation around body positivity, around self-worth, around honoring the vessel that you are embodying in this lifetime and how you celebrate it. Her radical self-love message delivered a lot of joy and also this sense of being unapologetic for those who felt like it was both necessary and countercultural in the music and media environment that was still saturated with a lot of body shame. In 2019, Greta Thunberg was named Person of the Year by Time magazine. At 16 years old, she was the one telling world leaders at the United Nations, how dare you? A 16-year-old. Time made her the Person of the Year, making that the youngest Person of the Year in the magazine's history. And this was really beautifully capturing a generational passing of urgency that no other image of 2019 really matched. This really put everything into focus to say this is where we are in the world. When it came to television, Euphoria premiered on HBO and it's about to come back, and I can't wait. And again, Euphoria had mixed reviews too. Some people felt like it was a little too dark, it was a little too much, it was inappropriate for younger people to see. Now, again, for me personally, I'm like, oh yeah, that was high school. Lovely to see it illustrated on the TV screen. But again, it touched on topics that people would rather kind of just sweep under the rug. It touched on substance abuse, it touched on depression, it touched on grief, it touched on so many deep-rooted things that with teenagers, necessary conversations. HBO's Chernobyl was also widely regarded as one of the finest miniseries ever made, which was a story about the government that lied about a catastrophic failure and landed with uncomfortable contemporary resonance. Disney Plus launched in 2019 with over 10 million subscribers signing up on the first day. And The Mandalorian introduced Baby Yoda, which ended up becoming the internet's most beloved antidote to all of the political despair that we were experiencing. Last but certainly not least, when it came to the big screen, Parasite owned the year. It became one of the first non-English language films to win the award at the Cannes Film Festival and go on to win Best Picture at the Oscars in early 2020. This was a really sharp examination of class, wealth, and the violence hidden beneath the polished surfaces of prosperity. Quick rundown of the top headlines in 2019. We have the Trump impeachment, the Hong Kong protests, the Mueller report being released, the global climate strike in Greta Thunberg with millions of young people worldwide walking out of schools, and again, this teenage girl addressing the United Nations with all of this fury and intention and sacred rage. We have Notre Dame catching on fire and the grief across cultures, and this burning of an 850-year-old landmark that felt like watching something that feels irreplaceable just burn and disappear in real time. There was also the Christchurch mosque shootings where 51 were killed in a live-streamed white supremacist attack followed by New Zealand's swift gun reform. We had the Boeing 737 MAX being grounded after the 2 crashes and 346 people dead. We had ISIS and Baghdadi being killed after a 5-year military campaign. All of those protests that we touched on, Chile, Bolivia, Lebanon, Iran, Algeria, Ecuador, Hong Kong, all of this global uprising against this economic inequality and this entrenched political power that needed to be reviewed and revised and refined. And then we had the college admissions scandal, where the most visceral domestic symbol of wealth, privilege, and corrosion of institutional integrity was brought up front and center. So you know the drill. What were the themes then with all of this information and the things that unfolded in 2019? 1, there was a cycle completing. We saw this with the Chinese zodiac going through its full 12-year cycle, and 2019 being the year of the Earth Pig. We saw this with the Avengers saga closing out after a decade, Game of Thrones ending after 8 years, the Mueller investigation ending. That 2019 energy, that essence of 2019 was closing a decade. It was closing some long, worn out energy that was ready to be released. And again, when you reflect on your own journey, perhaps that was happening in your personal life. 2019 was saturated with this energy of just things finishing, whether it was institutions under all this pressure, narratives reaching their conclusions, or the collective unconscious sensing that something enormous was about to turn, and if we only knew what that was going to look like. It wasn't just an end of a year. 2019 was cosmically and culturally the last exhale before a very deep and different and how do you say that word? If it's a catalytic, you know what I'm trying to say, leave me alone. Inhale, right? Yes. And then we had all of this voice demanding to be heard, speaking into power. Again, the year of 3, this numerology, which is the year of the throat, expression, communication, the courage to say out loud what the body already knows, what the spirit already knows. And 2019 did just that. Greta Thunberg standing in front of the United Nations, 1 million people in Hong Kong refusing to be silenced, Billie Eilish whispering her anxiety into the ears of millions of people, Lizzo bellowing her self-worth from every stage, Lil Nas X refusing to be put into any box that was presented to him, and Parasite telling a class war story in a language that Hollywood kept pretending didn't exist. The noise of 2019 wasn't chaos, it was a testimony. And it was one that was not going to allow the world to keep silencing it. Lastly, we saw a lot of illusions being peeled away and this gap that was being too hard to ignore when it came to surface level understanding and the truth of the situation. There was this energy in 2019, and again with the pig and its sort of gullible shadow, and the college admissions scandal and the Boeing cover up and Game of Thrones ending in a way that disappointed people because it didn't honor what the story sort of promised. And all this climate data that couldn't be ignored. And then now Notre Dame is burning. It was like this relentless experience of exposing the distance between the world's surface and its actual condition. Systems that presented themselves as safe or permanent or just were revealed as constructed and corrupted and quite fragile. And even when we look at some of the artistry of 2019 between Parasite and Chernobyl and Euphoria, all three at their core were about violence concealed beneath a respectable appearance. And again, we touched on this earlier with the numerology of releasing this mask, releasing the performance to see what was actually underneath. Now, before we get to some reflection prompts on your shadow work for 2019 and what perhaps was coming up for you in that year that aligns with these themes, let's pull an activation card to see what was activating in 2019. All right, let's not me cutting to miracle. I mean, we definitely needed one. Divine masculine, fertility. Let's see. Spirit, what were we collectively activating in 2019? Please and thank you. We got transition at the bottom. No duh. Fertility again at the top. Birthing something new. Clearly. And the card we got for the activation was crown chakra, number 7. The frequency of the crown chakra, the violet flower of life, supports our spiritual connection to the universe and our ability to transmute negative energy into light. Hello. I just want to see what it says in the guidebook in case there's something that needs to be shared. The flower of life is a geometric shape recognized by many cultures all over the planet. It consists of 13 equal circles that intersect at the middle of each circle, creating a perfectly proportioned flower. As a symbol, the flower of life represents the universe as a whole, as well as the harmony in which all the separate components of the universe work together. This beautiful pattern is often used to indicate our understanding of our connection as humans and as spiritual beings to the whole. The color violet is associated with the 7th or crown chakra located at the top of the head. It is associated with our personal spiritual connection to the universe and source. Violet has the highest frequency in the visible spectrum of light and is therefore linked to the flame of transmutation, which burns away all negativity and transmutes it into light. Violet is the color of cleansing, purification, magic, mystery, and mysticism. Our sense of empathy and unity are associated with this chakra. Don't you just love when it all connects? Magic. Okay, let's talk about your shadow work reflective questions. Again, feel free to just sit with these questions to jog your memory, see what was happening for you in 2019. Look at your photos, look at your journals, look at whatever you need to look at to help you remember. And if you want to go deeper into this reflection and really get into it, into the shadow work that may have been coming up for you in 2019, then I will offer more prompts to my paid subscribers on Substack, which is linked below. The first question to ask yourself about your 2019, what cycle in your life was completing, whether you were ready for it to end or not? What were you keeping yourself from saying in 2019? And lastly, where was the gap between how you would present yourself to the world and your actual reality? As always, thank you so much for your time and for hanging out with me while we deconstruct all of these cosmic clues from the universe and time travel so that we can figure out where we are now and how everything connects. As always, I appreciate you and would love your support. So please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Get together, have a little hot girl math party. I'm here for it. And ask yourself at the end of the day, when you think of 2019, with all of the endings, all of the voices rising, all of the surfaces cracking, what in your inner life was quietly turning into something new and waiting for you to stop avoiding the turning point and simply turn? I'll see you next time when we dive into 2020. I can't wait. It's going to be a good one. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week.